Hello, my little pee-pee poopy pants babies. That's the worst intro I've ever made in my life. Now I know you're looking at this video, you see the title, you go, wait a second, I swore I've seen this one before, right? And I'll be honest, yeah, I mean, sure, I have used the same type of title before where, you know, Treasure Planet technically almost ruined Disney. I know you're thinking, how? There's no possible way that multiple movies almost destroyed Disney. I mean, look at Disney, they're untouchable, right? Well, you see, this movie is a little bit different. Now, whereas Treasure Planet mostly just lost Disney a buttload of money, The Black Cauldron is a little bit more than just a simple case of money. This is by far one of the biggest train wrecks I've ever heard of when it comes to a movie production, especially on the scale of Disney, which is quite unfortunate because I kind of like this movie, and apparently this movie was supposed to be the movie that puts Disney back on top. You know, it was the callback to the classic whimsical fantasy movies with a hero and a companion, a girl that he likes, and a big boss. And The Black Cauldron is actually based on a series of novels written by Lloyd Alexander called The Chronicles of Purdain. And these novels were an epic that were based on Welsh mythology. And before the movie even got its footing, there was already arguments of what the movie should be, whether it should be live action or animated. And I wholeheartedly agree that animation was the right choice for this movie. I mean, just by the production alone, I can't imagine how terrible a live action version would be. And another thing is the higher ups of Disney had a little bit of a complaint about the fact that this is based on a series of novels, you know? And they're trying to compress this huge fantasy world with 30 plus characters into just an hour and 20 minute, including credits, long movie. And that issue actually put this movie many years behind schedule, even prompting the New York Times to write an article predicting its doom. As originally Disney expected this to release in 1980, but with a combination of poor management and a full crew of rookie animators, this apparently was one of the first times that they really brought in some fresh meat when it comes to animators, there were a lot of complications. It's really just a classic case of young people butting heads with old people being like, no, this is the way it's always been. That's how it's supposed to be. And younger people being like, but I want to change things up, do something new. And as it just so happens, one of these young animators happened to be the wonderful Don Bluth. Yes, that Don Bluth, the man behind Anastasia. And as we have this huge fissure of old men telling these young whippersnappers to get off their lawn, Don Bluth eventually was put in charge, which kind of turned out to be a bad thing. Because I've mentioned this in a previous video before. Remember when I talked about Don Bluth, how he left Disney because he was having issues with Disney and he tried to make his own animation studio? Yeah, The Black Cauldron was the movie that made him leave Disney. Don Bluth, who was supposed to be the leader of this production, took 14 animators with him and left to go do his own animation studio. Don Bluth in an interview actually stated that we were just a group who loved animation and felt it had disintegrated into something quite inane. We wanted things to work there, but it's hard to reshape an old company. It's like trying to bend an old oak. Again, classic old man not wanting to change his ways. This put the movie on halt until a man named Joe Hale came into the picture. He was noted to be the one who really started getting this whole Black Cauldron production going and kind of get it into shape. However, when he started, you know, putting all the pieces together, he really started to realize, wow, this is a gigantic mess. As he stated himself, one of our problems was there were so many characters and so much story. It was a case of taking all this material and condensing it down into one story that we could put on screen. And like I mentioned before, they compressed the entire series of novels down to a 1 and 22-second movie, including credits. It's that short of a movie. And honestly, researching this, it's crazy how many big names were on this production and ended up leaving. Ron Clements and John Musker, the people behind Little Mermaid and Moana, agreed that they didn't like where the movie was headed, and apparently their ideas were shunned by the group and they were exiled from even working on the movie. I think it was like 9 old men that were just shaking their fist in anger at these young talented artists. And not only that, but Don Hahn, the man who went on to produce Beauty and the Beast, was the production manager, talked about how there were 3 people, including him, who were managing this whole project. And the problem with the fact that they had 3 different people managing is these 3 people never really communicated much They didn't really talk much at all, which led to a lot of complications and a lot of misunderstandings. And guess who else was brought into the fray? None other than the legendary Tim Burton himself. It's actually really cool because he was brought into the picture to, you know, give the whole creepy Tim Burton vibe. There's actually his version of the Horn King, which, man, seeing the design of the Horn King, man, I wish they kept him on this production. Or should I say, I wish he stayed on the production, because they didn't kick him, he left. Apparently there were some issues because they wanted Tim Burton to work with this other artist named Deja, and apparently they had conflicting ideas of the design of the movie. And we all know Tim Burton's style. Like, you can't really put Tim Burton's name on there if it's not going to be exactly Tim Burton's style. This literally had Tim Burton, quote, "I gotta get the hell out of here." He legitimately said, "I gotta get the hell out of this place." He saw this mess of a production and realized that this was a lost cause, like many others. And then another animator was brought in named Call, and the issue with his work is the fact that not only the younger animators couldn't necessarily keep up with the design and style of his work, but Deja found his designs to be bland and boring. Which, honestly, if you look at the picture of his design of the Horn King, you can kind of see what he was saying. So throughout the years, many people were either fired or they just realized it was a lost cause and left the production. But the one who would put this movie into its final push would be none other than Katzenberg himself. Yes, the man behind Megamind, Shrek, El Dorado, Chicken Run, and many others. But the problem with this is the fact that Katzenberg was quite new to animation, to the point where they literally had to teach him how animation worked and also how much animation costs. So he literally was learning as he was doing the production. So in a fumbled mess, gradually the production was coming to a close when Katzenberg finally asked that he wants to see the film for what it is at that point. And then he realized, holy shit, this movie is dark. Katzenberg ended up having many different scenes either cut down or just completely scrapped because of how gruesome and dark they were for a children's movie. And actually, some of these deleted scenes you could find on YouTube. And if you watch some of those scenes, you could really see what he was talking about. And that explains why this movie ended up being very choppy and also only an hour and 22 minutes long. So after all of this pain and misery and mess, the movie was finally released, only to just completely bomb at the box office and critically bomb as well. So let's just say, long story short on the intro, too long, didn't read, old men didn't like the young people's new ideas, so they ended up butting heads, and this is the product. Okay, so let's talk about the actual movie then, right? I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like the movie. Honestly, after reading all this information about the very messy production, it completely clears up every question I had about why did they make this decision? Why did they never explain this part and all that other stuff? Because yes, the movie is definitely choppy. There isn't really much set up to the world. It kind of just starts and throws you into it. The dialogue is really choppy. And most of all, this movie tends to be kind of on the darker side for a children's movie. Honestly, I would venture to say that this is some of the darkest animation I've seen out of Disney. I mean, some of these scenes in this movie would definitely scar you as a child. But something about this movie kind of feels comforting and homey. I mean, sure, there's a lot of cliche moments, a lot of things that you could chalk up as just generic fantasy hero movie, but something about it I just love. Just a classic adventure of a young boy who wants to go on adventure, he wants to do great things, and it just so happens that this boy is way in over his head when it comes to this. I feel like it encapsulates how a naive young boy would actually react to a situation like this, of being thrust into an adventure that is just way in over his head. I feel like a lot of these adventure movies, they kind of thrust the character into maturity, like they get a weapon and then they're just like, I am a man now, I am a hero. Whereas in this movie, the main character is kind of annoying, kind of naive, and for lack of a better word, he's pretty much just a brat. Like, a very important part of this movie is whenever the young boy finds this powerful sword, instead of just holding it up like, yes, finally, after all these years, I have become a hero, the boy just swings it around willy-nilly going, Mom, look, I got a sword, Mom, yeah! Because that's what a kid would genuinely do in that situation, not realizing the true nature and the true horror of the predicament that he's actually in. So the movie starts out very fast, very choppy, as I've said. Boy lives with a man named Dalbin, and what I can surmise about the intro was Taran, who is the main character, starts complaining that oh, if the war is over, I'll never be able to fight. So I'm assuming his parents must have died in the war, or maybe at least his father died in the war, because it's never truly revealed who Dalbin is in relation to Taran. He's always just referred to as Dalbin. And just to double check before someone like corrects me in the comments, no, Dalbin does not mean like father or uncle in Welsh. It actually means blind chief, which I don't know what that necessarily means in relation. And also in the book, apparently Dalbin was 379 years old. So I have absolutely no idea who Dalbin is at all. Hell, I don't even know who Taran is, man. Now all I want to do is just read the books. So like I said, little setup, you don't really know what's going on. It's kind of sprinkled in the dialogue here and there, and you kind of have to pick up the pieces, even though they're puzzle pieces that don't actually fit, so it doesn't make sense. So Dalbin mentions the worry of the Horn King's return. Taran is annoyed at how much they spoil their pig Henwin, who is the cutest pig who we must protect at all costs. Then Dalbin says that he will discover why soon enough. And then Taran goes on the classic adventure rant of, I'm not a little boy anymore, I'm a warrior. I need to go out and do an adventure, not take care of some disgastly pig. Then all of a sudden, while Henwin is getting a sponge bath, he starts freaking out and Dalbin's like, oh no, I didn't think it would be so soon. What would be? I don't know what's going on. And then he puts the pig's head in the water and goes doodly doo, and apparently the pig can see visions with water. There was no setup in this movie, goddammit. I have no idea what's going on, but let's keep going. But with this vision, Dalbin sees the Black Cauldron, which is a weapon of mass destruction because it has the power to bring back the undead army to destroy everything in its way. And if the Horn King gets a hold of this, I mean, you know, not a good thing. He's a bad guy. And just so you know, I'm not summarizing the intro at all. It literally just happens in succession like that. Literally within 5 minutes. Which, man, I just want to say, if this movie actually had the chance to have a proper setup, it would just be so much better. But from here on out, it kind of feels like you were just dumped in the middle of an adventure and then you don't know what's happening. Which, don't get me wrong, a lot of movies do that on purpose for an effect, like over time, you know, you get pieces and stuff and you start figuring things out. The problem is you never figure it out. You don't get those little pieces of information. It just, you're going on an adventure with this kid. You don't know why. You don't know who the Horn King is or what he's doing. All we know is Horny King bad. Got to take him out. So Taran gets sent on a quest by Dalbin in a panic and tells him to run to the hidden cottage at the end of the Forbidden Forest so he can hide Henwin from the Horn King. Because with Henwin's power, the Horn King can find the Black Cauldron. Then we get a cut of the Horn King, who I would just like to mention is goddamn terrifying. Probably one of the creepiest designs of a villain I've seen. Sure, it is basically just Skeleton Man, but he still looks creepy. And the introduction of him is basically just saying, you will rise soon enough, my lovely pets, and together we'll devour the very god. I'm not Lord of Blasphemy. And at this part of the movie, we truly start seeing Taran's naivety, constantly bragging about how he's going to be a hero. Everyone's going to love me. And then he's over there bragging about how he's going to protect Henwin from any enemy that walks along the way. However, when he catches a sight of his reflection in the water, he sees a vision of himself as a wonderful hero getting praised by millions as the greatest warrior of all time. And then after he wakes up from his daydream, Henwin's gone. Showing the concept of the boy being obsessed with the idea of glory to the point that he's blind to his actual journey, which I feel like can relate to a lot of things in real life. A lot of people are obsessed with the glamour of, say, fame and fortune and stuff like that, but no one really wants to actually trug through the shit to get there. And this is where we meet the best character in the movie, Gurgi, who is an animal? Dog? I don't really know what you could call Gurgi, actually. And after a Google search, I see that even all of the sources are confused as well. Some say he is a dog, and others say he's a badger. But anyway, there's a little spout between him and Gurgi. You know, Gurgi wants his munchies and crunchies, and then Taran's like, get away from me, swine, fiend. And while that's happening, Henwin's getting attacked by 2 dragons. Taran is just stupid, man. Like, all he had to do was watch a pig. You can't even do that. So the 2 dragons take Henwin to none other than, you guessed it, the Horn King's castle. And so our journey begins. And then Taran just walks into the castle. Yeah, I'm not joking. There is no like journey to the castle or how he gets in. It's just poof. Now he's inside the castle and he's sneaking by a guard. They cut out so much, man. So he ends up walking into a group of guards having a feast and also having a big boobed lady dancing for them.
God damn!
And then we meet Creeper, who is basically what I would compare to Pain and Panic from Hercules, as all he is really is the right-hand minion of the Horn King, and the Horn King basically just chokes him every second he gets. So this next scene is quite bleak. Taran runs in to protect Henwin and obviously, fails. The Horn King then commands Taran to use the pig's powers in order to locate the Black Cauldron. And when Taran refuses, they take the pig and shove the pig on a bloody chopping block, and she is about to get her head chopped off. Jesus. So Taran agrees that he will show him where the Black Cauldron is. And as he begins the spell of Henwin, which I just want to mention, he was never taught the spell. He literally just figured out that Henwin was a magic pig. However, he knows the exact incantation to push that vision. I don't understand. But he ends up getting jump scared by the Horn King. Yeah, the Horn King's literally just doing this behind him. He turns around, freaks out, runs away. Henwin escapes, but Taran ends up getting put into the dungeon. And then we meet Princess Elonwy, who was the princess that the Horn King stole because he believed that her bauble, which is like a magic ball, would be able to show him where the Black Cauldron was. And obviously it didn't work and she got thrown into prison. And she is another character who I honestly really like, because as Taran is over there crying in fear, she kind of walks up like, oh yeah, it kind of sucks getting stolen by a Horned King, but I'm escaping. Would you like to follow? Like, she just doesn't give a shit, bruh. She's actually way more courageous than Taran, which for a movie made in the 80s is nice to see, It's not the cliche of woman in peril and all that shit. It's actually the complete opposite, as she kind of saves him. So during their escape, they stumble upon a burial chamber, who Elonwy mentions could be the chamber of the great king who built this castle. What king? What is this castle? How did it get overtaken? No one knows. And Taran, being the naive, dumb child that he is, he just yoinks the sword off of the king and says, well, he's not going to use it. The fuck? All my homies hate Taran. Now, this sword actually becomes more of a symbol than, an actual object throughout the movie, and I will explain why later. However, along the way, they meet a bard named Fleur de Flamme with a magic harp that breaks strings every time he lies, and I assume that he is captured as well because he had a magic harp. Horn King probably believed that the magic harp they didn't say that, but I'm just assuming because everyone who was trapped had some sort of item that was magic. But I just want to mention the harp that breaks strings every time he lies does lead to some good comedic moments here and there I will appreciate. But as they are discovered, Taran gets in a fight with a large brute and scares him off with the sword. Apparently, this sword holds great magic. And here comes the scene that I talked about in the beginning, and I love this scene. Instead of holding the sword like a hero looking up upon it in great wonder, he just starts swinging it around like a toy, laughing maniacally. Because in his eyes, that's literally what it is. It's just a toy. It's a fun object, that'll make him a hero. It's just a young boy way in over his head. And his foolishness follows him all the way out of the castle. With this new powerful sword, he is really overconfident, and with a little bit of luck, they manage to escape. And this next part I honestly find funny. That classic thing that a lot of movies do, where there's always like a fissure, like an internal fissure within the good group, where one person gets mad at the other person, and then like, oh, I don't agree with this, oh, I don't agree with that. Yeah, they do that within 5 seconds. It was me who got us out alive with the magic sword. You wouldn't be anything without that sword. Nuh-uh, I'm a great warrior. No, you're not. And then they walk the separate ways, come back. I'm sorry for what I said earlier. Oh, it's fine. You are a great warrior, That's it. That's literally what happened, word for word. So anyway, since they escaped, Gurgi finds them and returns to the group and tells Taran that he saw where Henwin went as he found tracks. And along the way, they get sucked down a water hole into a cave, and then they meet the fairies. And I guess these fairies are hiding underground to hide from the Horn King and basically just waiting it out until stuff goes back to normal. And as it just so happens, Henwin fell into the same cave, so Henwin is there and they're all reunited. And as it just so happens again, the fairies just happen to know the exact location of the Black Cauldron. How convenient. So basically at this point, Henwin was completely useless to the story. So Taran decides he is going to find the cauldron first in order to destroy it so the Horn King can't use it. So a wisecracking fairy named Dolly ends up leading them to Morva, which is the location of the cauldron. And apparently Morva is just the home of 3 witches. And the only reason they were able to escape getting turned into frogs and boiled alive and eaten is the fact that one of the witches were horny as fuck for Flam. I mean, seriously, she was thirsty.
And she needed her thirst quenched.
So after these witches end up witnessing the power of Taran's sword, they ask for a trade. And I think this part's kind of hilarious because you truly see how the power is not in Taran. Taran is not necessarily the warrior, as the sword is literally floating in the air, swinging around, cutting stuff, and then Taran ends up grabbing it and gets dragged around by the sword as it's doing everything. So Taran is literally, he ain't doing shit. He's just letting the sword do everything for him. And I feel like this is the big start to Taran's character development, as the sword is more of a symbol more than anything. Because the witches ask for a trade, the cauldron for the powerful sword. So reluctantly, he does throw all of his passions for being a warrior to the side in order to save humanity and receive the cauldron. However, it was revealed by the witches later that he cannot destroy the cauldron. The only way to beat the cauldron is to stop its evil magic by some harrowing person crawling into the cauldron with their own free will, sacrificing their life. That is the only way to do it. A little bit of foreshadowing. And since everyone's a little bitch and no one wants to do it, the Horn King ends up finding their location. And then there was some weird, awkward romance thrown in there. And I'll be honest, I tend to just ignore romance portions in most movies unless it actually has something important to do with the plot. And you could tell this romance scene was 100% an afterthought, as it just was crudely thrown in and awkward and it didn't really make much sense. But anyway, they all get captured except Gurgi, who runs away, and the Horn King starts the ritual to bring back the dead and wreak havoc on humanity. And this scene is definitely one of the most gruesome and terrifying scenes in the movie. Some of the imagery in this scene is quite dark. Skeletons coming back to life, of course, killing his living minions. I completely understand why they cut down the scene quite a bit, because if you look up the deleted scene that was cut from this portion, you actually get to see the bodies of the men melt, like their flesh melts off of their bodies down to the bone. I guess that green juice liquid like is acid and it just melts people. And I know you think, oh, that's smart that they cut that out. There's no way they would have a person melting or their flesh getting ripped from their body in a kid's movie. Oh, it's in there. It happens. This is just a little bit later. So while the undead are walking out of the castle to destroy everything, Gurgi comes to save the day and releases Flam, Taran, and Elanwi. And as a last-ditch effort to stop the Horn King's army, Taran decides that he wants to sacrifice himself and jump into the cauldron. But the moment before he jumps, Gurgi steps in front of him and ends up sacrificing himself. Gurgi's the best character in the movie, changed my mind. Oh wait. You can't. So since Gurgi sacrificed himself, it did completely shut down his army. However, the cauldron was not satisfied with the soul that was put inside. At least that's what I surmised from the situation. It wasn't really explained because it said just one person needs to do it, but I guess it wanted more. Because the cauldron basically started sucking people like a vacuum just to kill the most nearest soul in order to satisfy its hunger. And Taran and the Horn King were the closest to the cauldron. They had a little scuffle and the Horn King ended up getting sucked into the cauldron in one of the most gruesome ways possible. And that spelled the end of the horrible reign of the Horned King, but with the bittersweet end as Gurgi is gone. Gurgi, the one who started as an annoying pest but became a hero. And this is where the sword becomes more of a symbol than anything else, as I mentioned before, because the witches end up deciding they want to take the cauldron back, but Flam tries to bargain with them. And the first offer that the witches give them is the magic sword back to Taran. And instead of taking the sword with powers to make him a great warrior, he refuses and instead requests the life of Gurgi. And with some coaxing from Flam, they agreed and Gurgi was returned to them. So ironically, Taran technically became a hero for not seeking the power and the glory. And you can kind of almost see that they were trying to say that normal people can be heroes. You don't need to be some amazing, powerful being warrior in order to become a hero, because he sacrificed all of the dreams that he had in order to save someone he cares for. Honestly, I feel like this is such a beautiful ending to this movie, amazing ending to his character arc. He started off as a bratty young kid who was way in over his head, obsessed with the glory of things, and then he realized what the world was truly like. And instead of taking that glory with the sword, because that's really what the sword symbolizes, it symbolizes free glory, something that you don't have to work for. He could hold that sword and just instantly be a hero by how much power that sword possesses. And it kind of shows that that's just not the way that you should be looking at life. You know, life isn't a magic sword that can solve all of your problems. I feel like there's a lot of good messages in this movie. There's a lot of good parts in this movie. And boy, I wish it was fleshed out a little bit more. Honestly, it kind of just makes me want to read the novels instead of this movie. But I still thought the movie was pretty good. There was a lot of great moments. The ending was great. I feel like it had a lot of good messages behind it. It's just the world was very confusing, empty, because you didn't really know what was happening half the time. But thank you all for watching this video. If you guys want to go watch me live stream, you could talk to me about this movie, what you think about this movie. I'm probably streaming right now on Bionicpig Live, my second channel where I stream. So go head on over there, talk to me, and you know, do the liking and subscribing like I always say at the end of this video. I'll see you next time, baby.